Hi there, it's Jody Lawyer, Holistic Occupational Therapist at Helix Healing Path. And I thought that for today's mini lesson, we would talk about sensory integration. And I'm just going to give you a quick overview of the different areas of sensory. So sensory integration is this process of organizing all of the sensations that are coming into the body for use. And that allows the brain to then produce a functional body response. And it also produces emotions and thoughts and these useful perceptions. And our senses give us information about the physical conditions of our body and the environment around us. And so when the brain and the central nervous system is functioning in an organized and systematic manner, then we would say that one is able to adequately process and organize the sensory information that's coming in for their use. When we're looking at the pyramid of learning, the central nervous system is at the bottom of the pyramid. And the next rung up then is the tactile system, the vestibular, and vestibular is movement, and proprioceptive input, which is how we register body awareness. And the next level up is olfactory, auditory, gustatory, and visual. So an individual may be oversensitive or undersensitive to sensory information that's coming into the body. And so when someone is oversensitive, they cannot block out unimportant or irrelevant stimuli, or there might be too much information that's coming in for them to process. And somebody that's oversensitive then may respond in one of two ways in an attempt to cope with the sensory input that's coming in. They may be sensory sensitive or they may be sensory avoiding. So when someone is sensory sensitive, they avoid these problematic sensations, which might be distractible, they can't concentrate, they may display hyperactivity or always fidgeting, maybe in complete or total overwhelm by the stimulation that's coming in, and they may become really quiet or chronically anxious. So someone that is sensory avoiding will actively engage in reducing the frequency and intensity of sensory stimulation. So they'll try to do things to avoid that stimulation. He or she may be resistant to change, and they can develop these rigid rituals in an attempt to create this predictable environment where then the sensory stimulation can be tolerated. And we all have these little quirks that we do to help us keep us organized. Like when I was younger, I always wrote out my schedule with different colored pens, and that was my attempt to control the environment around me by doing these little types of things. Or when I was really young, I had some sensory stuff, some sensory issues, and I would push and pull my bedroom furniture and move it all around because I really needed that heavy work. So that was my way of organizing. And you will see this show up within yourself and with the individuals around you, because we all do these things to help us cope with our sensory systems and things that might be too alerting or too dulling. So it's always an attempt to help get that nervous system to adjust right level. So the person that is sensory avoiding can also appear completely lethargic, overwhelmed, and withdraw. And they're just totally withdrawn and inward because they cannot process all the information that is coming into their system. So with undersensitivity to sensory input, the individual receives too little information, and therefore the event does not create this impression, which is also referred to as undersensitivity. Undersensitive individuals register sensations less intensely than most people, and that's because they do not receive the sensory information from everyday events. So then subsequently, an individual needs to have an increased amount of stimulation to achieve this type of alertness. So we're always doing things to regulate the nervous system. That's why you might see somebody that is an adrenaline junkie, for example, that loves to take thrills or do these things. That's because they are working with their sensory system and trying to get it to come up or at this just right level. Whereas another person, like for me, going on, I'm trying to remember the name of the ride in Vegas, but I went on it where they whip you up into the air and come down really fast, and I thought I was gonna vomit afterward. I felt my whole body was shaking for about an hour and a half. It's too much for me. So it's interesting to see in yourself how different sensory inputs impact us. Sensory seeking actively pursues the sensory systems to stimulate their system. And so they'll seek out high levels of sensory information more than their typical peers. And sensory seekers may be active adults, continuously engaged in their environment. They might be that person that's always fidgeting, tapping their pencil, always have to get up and move around. They can't sit still. They may have trouble, they may be fiddling with pens. They may get really excitable. So that is one way that you are noticing within yourself and maybe your peers and family members if they are sensory seeking. And then with low registration, an individual who has poor registration for sensory input is just the opposite. They have dulled sensory systems. They accept this as a dampened, what's called a dampened sensory state, and does not go out of the way to engage the environment. So it looks like they're overwhelmed or withdrawn, or they may look like they lack initiative and have a tendency to be passive when really it's because their body is so overwhelmed and they're not able to adequately process that sensory information. They can also be really fatigued, look like the wallflower or a bystander too. So that's why it's so important to get to really know people and not just assume that someone is just shy or socially awkward or have a lot of anxiety, because the anxiety might be heightened because of the sensory processing. So touch processing, I went over that quite extensively in the previous video, but touch discrimination is the ability to interpret information coming into the body via the skin. And so the tactile system uses these receptors in our skin to receive the touch sensations. And this then organizes the information and enables us to discriminate between threatening and non-threatening sensations. And we learned all of this very on when we were babies, what kinds of sensations feel good and what do not. And so we learned early on how to use these sometimes maladaptive coping mechanisms to help us with getting through our day and developing these routines. So the touch system is closely linked to the part in our brain that is responsible for fight or flight. So if someone comes up to us and unexpectedly touches us or taps us and we jump out of our skin, that would indicate then that that fight or flight is on high arousal, that it's just going all the time. And so it would be important to really work on getting your body acclimated to touch sensations so that you are helping to dampen that fight or flight response in the body. The auditory system detects sounds and receives information about volume and pitch and rhythm. And so it processes and organizes this information and enables us to distinguish between sounds and to remember what we hear and to develop communication and literacy skills. Oral sensory system protects our mouth and our body, and we receive information about texture, pressure, vibration, movement, temperature, pain, odors, and flavors. And the oral sensory system organizes this information and enables us to discriminate between harmful and safe substances and discriminate between touch, taste, and smell, develop our oral motor control needed for eating, drinking, talking, and to develop social skills. With visual processing is the ability to understand and interpret information that is seen. And so an individual may have normal corrected eyesight, but still have difficulties with visual processing. So it detects visual images and we receive information about contrast of light and dark, color and movement. And the one thing is, someone that's reading left to right may have, it could be a visual processing issue, but it could also be an auditory, because when you are actually reading, you're saying it out loud, and so that would need to be detected by a speech therapist that can actually help you decipher if you've got an auditory processing issue. But the visual system processes and organizes information and enables us to recognize similarities and differences between object forms, sizes, and positions, and remembering what we see. So let's talk about that junk drawer that we all have in our house, right? You pull it open and it's just a mess. I mean, I know mine is. Someone can have issues with visual processing and that is too much, and they cannot pick out objects that they need because it's so much in the background. And so there's issues with that. Or you might go out in the sun and the bright sun might be too much until you can become acclimated to those bright lights. So sometimes like lava lamps and dim lights can be really helpful for someone that has visual, especially with bright lights, visual processing issues. But the one thing is that visual processing is very important for developing hand-eye coordination and literacy skills, as I mentioned, with like reading and being able to pick out sight words and those kinds of brain gym games that you often play on your phone or the computer. So vestibular processing is the ability to interpret information related to movement and balance, and the vestibular system is in our inner ear and receives information about movement, change of direction, head positioning, and gravitational pull. There are these little crystals in the ear called otoliths, which are the facilitators of this movement and registering the movement. And so sometimes those crystals can get loose, and then you have to go see the doctor for that. But anyway, the vestibular system is one of the most important senses, but most people don't really understand what it does. It detects movement and responds to gravity. And so anytime, like even if you're driving in your car and you turn your head, you are activating your vestibular system when you do that. Or if you reach down to get something off the floor, it's the different head position. And so when you come up, sometimes you can feel really dizzy. And so that is because you're registering that movement and your body is acclimated to those fast kinds of movements. So you can feel dizzy or nauseous. And when kids especially have like sensory processing issues, sometimes that's why amusement parks are so calming and grounding for them, because they are getting a combination of this movement and then the proprioceptive input, which just helps to offset their whole system. And so they'll be really calm and organized for several hours after engaging in this kind of sensory input, like this blast to their system. But the vestibular system processes and organizes the information and then enables us to coordinate these body movements in space, coordinate eye movements with the head movements, and develop and maintain normal muscle tone. Coordinate both sides of the body together, so the bilateral coordination, and maintains body postures and adjusts the levels of alertness. So proprioceptive input then is the sense that tells us where our various body parts are located in relationship to each other and whether the body is moving with the right amount of effort. So this could be even just writing. So somebody that writes too hard and breaks the pencil lead really needs to have that added input to be able to feel the pencil in their hand. Or somebody gets really, somebody really enjoys jumping and crashing into things and needs a lot of the push-pull with weights, for example. I always have been a person that does weights because I need that extra push and pull, and do yoga. I need to have that to really help calm my body down. And so everyone has a different threshold for sensory input and what's coming into the body. And so you just learn to discriminate what feels good for you, but our proprioceptors are in our muscles and in our joints and gives us information then about where our body is in space. So some of that is good proprioceptive awareness. For example, if you close your eyes and you hold your arms out, and then you come at like, put them on your heart, or like Simon says, put them on your head, put your hands on your head. You know where your body is in space, even with your eyes closed. You can tell. And so you've got good proprioceptive awareness of your body parts. But someone that does not, maybe like at Target, touching all the objects on the shelf, or you might see them like kind of crashing in or on someone, which is called edging, trying to get a feel. They're trying to figure out where their body's in space by using another person to help them with that. And so it will show up in different ways when someone doesn't have good proprioceptive awareness. So when we perform this action, it gives us feedback information in the brain, and then we are able to grade the movement. So then we decide, I think I need to have more pressure or back off a little bit. But this is all done through trial and error, and your body responding to the way your body feels when you engage in an activity. And then with multisensory processing, this is the ability to receive, interpret, and integrate information from more than one sensory system at a time. And so this establishes this complex network of these nerve pathways that enable successful sensory integration. And so it receives a combination of information about sound, visual images, movement, gravitational pull, touch sensation, odors, and flavors. And this then enhances memory and learning, because learning that occurs in a multisensory environment is more easily recalled due to the stronger associations. So for example, cooking or cutting up something in your kitchen is a multisensory thing because it's proprioceptive, like how much pressure does do I need to put on the knife to cut through the lemon? And then you might smell the juice of the lemon coming, or you might want to taste it. And then you're using your hand, so you're using bilateral coordination, and how it feels, so tactile information. Maybe you don't like the juice running down your hand. So there's all kinds of things that are happening when you are engaged in any kind of a given activity. And so we take for granted when our sensory systems are just operating smoothly, but for someone that has an area that needs to be addressed, it could be, I wouldn't say disastrous, but sometimes it can be really challenging for someone to be able to integrate this in a smooth manner that they're able to use in their life, or what we say, like appropriately output for use. So just some different quick things that you can do. If you've got some auditory challenges, you can use specialized headphones that helps to retrain the inner ear so that you are maybe not so averse to like the dog barking unexpectedly or the fire alarms going off. Like I always know that when I'm up here in my office at 1 o'clock on the first Wednesday of the month, the sirens go off. And I mean, I usually don't jump out of my skin, but it just kind of jars me a little bit. So sometimes using some of these specialty types of equipment can really help. And usually that's done under the supervision of a speech or an OT. Sometimes fans with that rhythmic movement can be really calming for the body. Noise canceling headphones, a metronome, the white noise machines. You can experiment with different types of music like solfeggio or harmonics, and there's the different hertz frequencies, and I use that pretty regularly. Even for me, like I'll use it sometimes when I'm meditating or if I want to go take a nap, and that can have a very calming effect in the body. And then I went over touch pretty extensively, but like deep hugs, burritoing, cuddling, petting your dog or pet, lotion on the legs, twisting or pulling your hair is another one that we sometimes regulate our tactile system. Finger pulls, having someone do finger pulls on you can be really organizing, and it's also a combination of the proprioceptive input. Using heavy blankets or a weighted vest or a weighted blanket on you for short amounts of time can also be really helpful with your touch and tactile system. And then with oral, so chewy foods tend to relax us, like beef jerky or bagels or chewing gum. Sucking pudding or yogurt through a straw, which I know sounds really funny, but we used to do that a lot in clinic because mouth is really important. It has lots of muscles in here, so this can be really organizing for the body when you are stimulating the jaw. And so that will be really organizing for you. Warm liquids tend to be more calming, like tea or hot chocolate, but cold things like frozen treats and really cold liquid and water tend to be more alerting for our body. And then like sucking on hard mints or lemon drops, mints. Some people really love the tart types of treats, and that helps to really wake them up. Some people like pretzels and chips and crackers, and that can also help wake up your body a little bit too. And then in terms of visual, so lava lamps are really nice. The sea salt lamps, I've got one back here in my office. I have one in my house. My daughter has one in her room. Low lights tend to be more calming, and fluorescent lights can be very alerting. And so you can get covers to put over those kinds of lights, watching ocean waves or sunsets or fire. And there's apps on the phone for that, which can kind of put you in a trance. So that will help with calming your visual system. And then movement. So typically slow linear movement, like a rocking chair or hammock swinging back and forth, is very calming for your nervous system. But some fast rotary input, like a tire swing, going on the park and going on amusement park rides, can be alerting. And especially as we age, our vestibular system does not process that kind of input very well. And so I think I mentioned earlier, you could get really nauseous when you're on a ride like that because it's just too much input. And so you have to have somebody kind of push down on your shoulders or push down on your head, and that can alleviate the nausea. But you don't want to push too hard so you're not cranking on the neck. But that can also help to offset nausea that you are feeling. And then with proprioceptive input, anything that's deep pressure, a push and pull with your joints is very calming. One of the tricks that I always used to do in clinic, and I've done with with people up here, if there's another person that comes in, is we'll pull the arms and the legs together. One person is pulling the arms, the other's pulling the legs. And we might hold for like 7 seconds and then let it go, and then pull together, hold for 7 seconds and let it go. And so when you're stretching the body, that has a very organizing, a very fast and quick organizing effect on the nervous system, can help with calming as well. So yoga, tai chi, dance, all of those kinds of swimming, all of that, any kind of exercise, walking, all of that engages the proprioceptors. And so that has an overall calming. So yes, you are doing the exercise and you have that cardiac output, which does help to make you feel calm, but you're also engaging all your proprioceptors, and that's what it is. They're just hanging from like a jungle gym bar. Any kind of pressure, having someone roll a therapy ball up and down your back is very calming for the body. Wearing like ankle weights or a backpack or a pressure vest, that can also have a very calming effect on the nervous system. So that is it for our little mini lesson on sensory integration and the sensory systems. Thanks for watching, and if you have any other questions or want to reach out, please reach out to me at jody@helixhealingpath.com. Thanks so much.